Good afternoon, everybody. Everyone hear me okay? All right, great. So I am Demi Perry. I'm the Vice President of GP Women, and we would all like to thank you for being here today. We'd like to thank the President's Council of Cornell Women, Grants, and the Graduate School for making the Speaker Series possible. Before I introduce today's speaker, I just want to remind you all and invite you to our upcoming event that's taking place at the Big Red Barn. It's going to be our annual elections and board meeting, and it's going to be held on Tuesday, November 19th at 4:30. So if you are on the GP Women listserv, you'll get a reminder about this shortly. And if you're not on the GP Women listserv but are interested in learning more about the organization and or joining, please see me or any one of the board members after this speaker series, and we will get you informed. So now I would like to thank you all for coming again, and this talk is titled The Work-Life Balancing Act, a conversation to explore how to go from surviving to thriving. Our speaker today is Allison Hill. She is responsible for developing and leading works initiatives related to diversity and inclusion, philanthropic giving, and community service. She earned her undergraduate and MBA degrees from Cornell University, where she is currently serving a 6-year appointed term and is on the steering committee for the President's Council of Cornell Women. She also serves on the board of the Michelle McGann Fund, which advocates for diabetic children. Allison has been married to her college sweetheart, Jeff, for 25 years. They have 2 daughters, ages 18 and 15, and 3 dogs. Allison also loves live music, cooking, traveling, running, reading, and sometimes just doing nothing. Let's give a warm welcome to Allison Hill.
How are you? Everybody's good today? Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love being here today, and it brings back a rush of memories of when my parents dropped me off in September of 1989. In a desperate attempt for my dad to seize the moment for some last-minute parental advice, he took out his felt pen that he never traveled without, turned over a Rudolph's cocktail napkin, and said, "Allison, here are the rules of college." So all these years later, I have saved this cocktail napkin because it was hilarious. So rule number 1 was balance. Rule number 2 was backup, because we had floppy disks back in the day. Rule number 3 was penis, but he meant don't touch them. Rule number 4 was seatbelt. Always wear your seatbelt when traveling. 5 was cardio, because that was back when cardio was a big deal. So that's a little person jumping rope. I dropped water on that part. And the last one was beer. Don't drink it. So I'm a pretty good rule follower, except for number 3. And I prefer Bacardi and Diet Coke anyway, so it wasn't a problem. But it was the first time that I had ever been introduced to the concept of balance. And the thought really struck me as something interesting. I thought about it a lot my freshman year as I was balancing a whole new world, experiences, workload, maybe going out a little too much. And I've thought about it ever since, during every phase of my life, including grad school, having kids, moving cities. And he described it more as play hard, work hard. But I don't really think that that's the right way to talk about it, and definitely didn't know about my fake ID back then. So in retrospect, the concept didn't cover the fact that sometimes we do things that we really get joy from, and so work life is probably not exactly the way to define it. So knowing that balance has always been a really important part of my life, I think it's amazing to be in front of such an amazing, incredible, intellectual, now that I see you, I'm going to say beautiful group of people. And I really want to thank Marika, Demi, and Anna for inviting me here, and Renee. And then dinner was so much fun last night too, so thanks for giving me a warm welcome. And I had a great time with Andrea, Janami, Liz, Catherine, Caitlin. The laughs, but also the reminders of how much we have in common, person to person, and generation to generation, in this 4-letter thing that we call life. So I know Anna couldn't be here today, but if I could have one more person in the room, it would be my younger self sitting right there in this audience. And even with that napkin of advice, she had a lot of anxiety. She needed to put things into perspective a little bit more and realize that balance isn't a one-size-all fits definition. So really, there isn't a perfect plan. Balance is really understanding yourself and what drives you. A balance of understanding what truly brings you joy. And it's not happiness, but I'm talking about that underlying feeling of joy. So I'm going to start by providing a little bit of context of my life, and then we'll get into some of the things that I've learned and some tips that I think could help you achieve your personal balance. All right? Okay. So as Debbie said, I've been married 25 years. I have 2 incredible daughters. Chauncey is 18 and a senior. Christina is 15 and a sophomore. I also have an incredible husband, Jeff, that despite rule number 3, I actually met him my freshman year, first semester, and we've been together now for 30 years. And I think we were both really attracted to each other because we're really studious. So I grew up in a pretty traditional home, meaning my dad worked as a successful real estate entrepreneur, and he was really busy and worked a lot. And my mom didn't work outside the home, but she ran our house like the efficient, organized, elegant person she was. She made sure that we ate all the food groups, that we stayed on the rails, that she nurtured us, and is probably one of the smartest, most well-read people I know. My parents actually met one summer during their high school years on a beach in Maine, and then dated long distance while she attended college and worked in Boston, and my dad was at West Point. And as someone recently said that I work with, he goes, that West Point thing explains a lot about you. So yes, he had high expectations from us from a work ethic, integrity, behavior, and timeliness. My mom had high expectations from us in terms of core values, kindness, and family. So between them both, I had pretty amazing role models that I lived with, both personally and professionally, but very different. And it raised the bar really high in 2 very different capacities for me. I wanted to go to the Cornell Hotel School since the 7th grade, and that had a lot to do with them. I would describe my parents as life experiencers. They lived in Germany when they were first married, and they traveled all over Europe for $5 a day camping on their super tight Army budget. And as we grew up, they brought my brother Jonathan and I to as many countries and places as they could so that we could experience different cultures and new ways of thinking. And that's what made me fall in love with the whole world of hospitality. Feeling home despite not being home. So Cornell was going to be the place for me to realize all my professional dreams, a world-class education and opportunities to work all over the world. I had very high expectations of my career. So falling in love early in life was amazing, but at the same time, it forced me to figure out what was really important to me and how to pursue my dreams professionally and balance the rest of what I wanted personally. I moved 5 times for Jeff's career, none of them all over the world, but some places like Wichita, Kansas, Dallas, Texas, and now Atlanta. And while every decision wasn't easy, we've been able to lead careers we both love and are proud of, raise 2 daughters that are funny, kind, and smart, and have really good relationships with our family and friends. So currently, as Demi said, I work as a senior executive at a private equity firm based in Atlanta named Rourke Capital Group. Not on the investment side, but what I would argue is probably the best job at the firm. So I have the privilege of being the head of diversity and social responsibility. I absolutely love my job, and I really love the people at Rourke. I'm surrounded by some of the brightest and kindest people. And we have brands that I love too, like Sonic, Orange Theory Fitness, Dry Bar, Buffalo Wild Wings, so a lot of fun consumer brands. And we're a pretty big firm. We have $13 billion in equity capital. Between the portfolio, we generate $36 billion a year in system-wide sales. We've actually generated over 150,000 jobs for the companies that we buy, and we employ 670,000 people in 81 countries. So if anyone doesn't know what private equity is, just the headline is we get money from institutions like a Harvard Scholarship Fund or a Citi Pension Fund. We use that money, buy companies, increase their value, sell them off, or take equity out, and thus the pension funds are better for the people that need them when they're ready to retire, and the scholarship funds are there for people when they need them. So we really love what we do as a firm. So just like you, juggling teaching, right? I learned this last night, that you teach, you go to school, you're trying to get your degree, you're trying to make it to the big red barn at times. So there's many roles and responsibilities and stresses to handle. So the same with me. I think we're very similar that way. I'm a mom, a wife, executive, daughter, sister, And then the ones that I want to take on, like being a girlfriend to my friends, a dog mom, or volunteering. And then there's activities that I enjoy: reading, running, doing nothing, cooking, cocktailing, design, like you name it. So sometimes these things shift, adjust, prioritize, and my husband always looks really sad when he's at the bottom of my list. As time has gone on and I've added even more activities to my list, like when your kid makes a team sport and all of a sudden you're like, what? Now I have to go to every game, how am I gonna do that? Or you get talked into being the team mom, which is a full-time job in itself. So I know that you're already dealing with this, and I'm not gonna lie. It's not always easy, but I promise that you can do it well with the right mindset. So when I sat down to think about this and what I would share with my own girls if they would actually listen to me, and my younger self if she would actually listen to me, I came up with 10 things that have really helped me live more peacefully, more joyfully, and more rich in experiences. I'm only 48 though, so I still have a lot of learning to go. So how can you write the script for your own life? How can you be confident in your decision making? How do you not live someone else's story? And the heart of balance, to me, answers the question of, when you're 80 and you look back on your life, did you build a career resume or did you build a life resume? How do you want people to remember you? Which one do you really want? Okay, so we're gonna go to tip number 1, and I'm gonna have to have a helper help me with something. But this is really know who you want to be. So to be happy and feel balanced means knowing what really energizes you. So it's important that you know this so that you can underpin a lot of your decision making with these values. So not what you want to do, where you want to work, none of that. I'm talking about like, who are you? Back to all of those different roles that we're trying to balance. So rewind to about 10 years ago. Jeff and I are sitting in marriage counseling because yes, even the best marriages hit a bump. You just hold on tight and work through them. We just moved for the 5th time, and I honestly could have won an Oscar for Victim of the Year. Jeff is frustrated. He doesn't understand. We made this decision a year and a half ago. Why are you bringing this up now? Well, the counselor therapist had us do an exercise that I want all of you to spend 1 minute doing right now. I'm going to pass out do people even use pen and paper anymore? Okay, so I have these, if someone doesn't have their own paper. So it doesn't matter if you have a partner or not. This exercise is just great for the first step of identifying your personal definition of balance. And I will say, if you do have a partner to do this with though, Jeff and I left that day, we made out at the elevator bank, and we never went back to therapy again. I'm gonna save you a lot of money in your future. Okay, so this is life. Life is like a pie, right? I'm sure you all have heard this. You only have so many slices and pieces. And here's my friend's version when I was telling him I was coming here. He's handed this to his wife, and he's like, see, I'm quitting my job. Sex and family, that's all I want. So I hope you take it a little bit more seriously. But we'll take a few minutes for you to draw the pieces of your life. What's important is make them bigger or smaller based on the matter of importance to you. Nothing is a wrong answer here. This is purely your personal way that you want to live your life. And be brutally honest with yourself. So you can have hobbies, you can have needle pointing, clubbing, big red barn, spiritual activities, whatever makes you feel whole and feel joyful. And when you look back at age 80, what are those pieces? So I had like my new favorite Lizzo song in here, but I couldn't get it to play because I guess she's taken it all off YouTube where you can't embed it. So I can hum for you, or we'll just spend like 60 seconds while you do this. Mm-hmm. It can be what it looks like now. I mean, I just did mine of like, so mine had, I actually separated out my parents from, Jeff's like, God, you're complicated. I had so many slices, and like Jeff's was like 4, you know? So I had all the different things that I liked to do or wanted to do or were important to me, friendships and things like that. And you don't have to get it perfect today. You have your whole life to work on your pie. Definitely would have been better with music, right? I throw my hair back, get the nails. Okay, so are we almost, should I keep going or? Okay. All right. Good? Okay. So now that you've finished your pie, I want you to look at your pieces and really think about the why. Why did you choose those categories? And what I mean by that is my husband had a really big piece for work. But for him, when he started to explain the why to me, it wasn't about money, it wasn't about having control, it wasn't about titles or anything like that. For him, it was all about security. So he grew up really middle class, came to Cornell, felt very intimidated, and for him, having that security was important. So no wonder he wanted to work with the same people that he really trusted for 23 years, even if that meant moving. And for me, I had a really big piece. Like I said, I separated out my parents. And from my side, he always thought I prioritized them over him sometimes for different decisions. But when I explained it to him, I was like, you know what? My mom is so smart. She sacrificed so much to bring us up. I just feel like I need to give back to her. And the same with my dad. He created all this fun and adventures for us all over the world. I really like my parents. I want to spend time with them. So when we were able to understand each other's significance of those pie pieces, it really helped us be a better team and to understand each other. So now that your pieces are complete, you start to see some of your personal values come forward and what's going to drive your decisions. Where do you really want to live? Where do you want to spend your vacations? You'll see that maybe only one or two pieces are related to work, right? So work-life balance isn't the right way to describe everything important to you. It's just a balanced life. And back to that pie, unfortunately, we can't make it bigger. It's not humanly possible. Okay, so now tip number 2, which is build and nurture relationships. So how many of you had family or friendships in your pie? Yeah, I hear that. So you have a lot of pressures on you right now, a lot of work, deadlines. The future's a little vague, right? And you've worked really hard to get here. But I would argue that however big you made that pie slice piece, make it bigger. Because building and nurturing relationships are truly the foundation of life. And whether they're school friends, work friends, childhood friends, build real authentic relationships and not network transactional relationships. You've got to spend time outside of the work to really get to know people in all facets of life. So as Cornell was kicking my ass with some of the workload, I remembered my dad's great advice, and I really sought out friends that I could commiserate with, study with, relax with. And it could have been really easy for me to keep my nose in a book and study all the time, so I had to push myself out of my comfort zone at times. I remember sweating, trying to find somebody to eat in the cafeteria with me. It was brutal. So, and friends are really great too for unraveling and unwinding expectations, whether they're from supporting parents, from society, like thoughts and fears of your own. And remember too that you have to give as much as you receive. So you can't make it about you and all your problems all the time. I can do that every once in a while. So even now I have an annual trip with my high school friends, 2 of which I went to kindergarten with, my college friends. And it would be so easy for me to say, God, I have this big project, I can't do this. I have PCCW seminar, I can't do this. Or, I can't miss a game. But I think you really need to think about the trade-off of some of these things, of how to build relationships at the same time as you're filling your other pieces. And it was actually my friends at Sprint, my very first marketing job in my 20s, that I sought advice from 5 years ago, going through a career change. Flew to Kansas City, they all took the day off work, and they sat there with me and counseled me and gave me great advice. So they encouraged me to raise my table, take on a bigger job, and it may be super obvious to some, but I really think I've seen people be too focused on work. I've seen people do those transactional, icky relationships with people. Really take the time to build authentic friends and family and nurture those. Okay, my favorite one is here. Lean into your strengths. So this is really important to knowing where you're going to excel in the right company, the right job, the right role. So you want to lean into your strengths versus hitting your head against the wall, trying to improve your weaknesses. So I think it also helps with that earlier unraveling that I was talking about too, whether it's parental society or whatever. And there's many methods to figuring this out, but my favorite way is something called Strengths Finders. Has anyone here done that? Okay. Great. So I believe in this so much. I want this to be my gift to you. And even if you've taken it before, maybe you could take it again. So I'd really love anyone who wants to do this, just write your email, your name, first name, last name, email address. We can pass a paper around. But I really think that this is something that can help you really, in coordination with your pie, help you make some good decisions and maybe save some of the pain that I went through when I was younger. So it's an incredible tool. It's run for years and years by Gallup poll. And they report back to you your top 5 super strengths. And there's an electronic version. So literally, as soon as I can get it to you, you could do it in 15 minutes. Because self-awareness is actually really not that easy. We think we're good at it, but we're really not. And when I connect this back to the happiness in my jobs, the ones that pulled out my super strengths were the ones that I was happy. The ones where I was crying every night were the ones that didn't match up at all. So as a snapshot, I'm going to show you just a couple things and give you a couple stories of why I think this is so powerful. So here's my 5. Connectedness, positivity, strategic, okay, yeah, all buzzwords a little bit. But when you dig into like underneath and how they start describing you, it's really fascinating. So here's my first one. You feel good about activities that do not involve keeping scores to decide who wins or loses. You reject the notion that life is a contest that others must lose so you can win. So guess what my first job was out of college? Yeah, I was a corporate sales manager where they pushed out a report every Monday. They ranked you. You got your bonus against your peers. I cried every single night. I had a pit in my stomach. I dreaded going to work. And I was like, oh my God, I hate this. I don't like competing against people. I don't like going after business and making it so like transactional that I'm only being nice to them because I want them to help me get my bonus or whatever. So anyway, I tried to learn as much as I could in that job, but at the end of the day, I was wasting my time. Trying to improve my weaknesses was not going to help me be better at anything. So the world around me was not getting my true purpose, and my unhappiness from my job spilled into my unhappiness in my personal life, and I was completely out of balance. So another example of why I love this report. It's very likely you might describe the good life as taking the dare, walking toward the unknown, or working high in the air without a net to stop or fall. You value people more than things. So thinking back to the marriage counseling and sitting there and second-guessing a decision to move, that was total bullshit. Change and new experiences is what I crave. I love that kind of stuff. So I never had a problem going to find the new job. I was just being victim of the year for what other reason. I was mixing other parts of my frustrations and putting the blame on the wrong spot. So again, if I had taken this test way long ago, I could have saved myself some money. And then the next one, going to more positive, you facilitate dialogue between individuals and you create cohesive, efficient, resourceful, productive work groups. So my job at Coke, I was leading integrated marketing campaigns on the global side. So what that means is you sit in the center of digital, mobile, storytelling, like all these people and their agencies, and you work with people all over the world. That was a perfect job for me. There was a reason that I liked it, but there was also a reason I was good at it, and it didn't feel like work. And then my last one, my job now. You value humankind to guide your decision making, and you underscore what people have in common. I absolutely love bringing out people in their best, and now I have the opportunity to influence our firm in areas of impact that really matter to our future generations. So I would have saved myself a lot of hallway sex if I had known this back in the day. Does anyone know what hallway sex is? So one person's on one end of the hall, and the other person's on the end of the hall, and you just yell, "F you." So yeah, that was Jeff and I. So please take me up on this offer, lean into your strengths hard, and if you aren't happy doing what you're doing or studying or whatever, you're doing the wrong thing. You were not put on this earth to barely survive, you miserable. The more you know about yourself and you can put yourself in the right situations, in the right tasks. I told my president last month, which is something I highly recommend never to tell your boss ever, was like, I love my job so much I work for free. My bad. Okay. So next tip, do not compare. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, every single person in this room has a different background, different plan, different circumstances, different decisions, different challenges. So there's no one perfect way of living or a perfect blueprint and no script to follow. Think of it as being the author of your own life, which I think is really exciting. Where I went really wrong younger in life was comparing myself to someone in the office next to me or a neighbor down the street. I'm not smart enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, I haven't done this yet. But what I didn't realize is that I was scripting my life with more rigor and more guts than I knew. I was living my pieces, right? I just didn't have the language to help support that. But I've fallen into this trap a few times. Sometimes we get so busy comparing ourselves to other people that that's what we think we should be doing, that we get off track and we start doing the wrong things. The important thing is you gotta just course correct, it's gonna happen, and get on the right track again. So in my case, I was interviewing at Coke for a job that I thought I really wanted, and I had been working on the communications side of Sprite, and I wanted to move to the brand side. Why? Because the brand was more like businessy, it had more decision-making power, and it was prestigious in the eyes of Coke. So I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. So they ended up putting this guy in the role instead of me, and he was the perfect guy, but he had also that month been labeled in the 30 under 30 marketing stars in Forbes. So, of course, I started traveling down the path. Oh my God, if I hadn't made that decision or that decision or that, I could have had this job. So, but when I go back to my pieces and slices and my strengths and all of that, that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to have a job that like sat in front of a spreadsheet or analyzed research all day long. That's not my personality. So, and I don't even really care about titles. I just thought it was prestigious. So I gave myself a few days to feel sorry for myself until my friend from Sprint called me. She happened to be in town in Atlanta from Kansas City. So back to the nurturing of relationships. She dragged me out of bed to go to breakfast. And she proceeded to tell me every reason that job would suck for me. And she was right, and we had a lot of good laughs, but I'm a hustler and a builder. So I left Coke, I went and joined a smaller company, Miller's Ale House, as their very first VP of marketing. I got to build their brand, their positioning, new marketing team, all their strategies. It was a job that I loved. So I think it's also a lesson on doors closing to open something better. All right, next one. Be ambitious with no expiration date. So have really big, audacious goals, as they say, but don't have an expiration date for yourself. You can't control how life is going to unravel and what lessons are being taught to you to move from chapter to chapter. Sometimes your advisor and PhD is going to take a lot longer, right, than you thought. But I'm just saying, stay the course and know that your dreams and goals are not meant to be done all at once. Life is a marathon. So going back to the night that I met Jeff, we were there to celebrate midterm exams, which I think is this week, right, and blow off a little steam. But when we walked into Johnny's Big Red Grill, which doesn't exist anymore, I guess, I locked eyes with my future husband. Although that was not the guy I was going to marry. I mean, this was 1989. I had plans of my own. But once we started talking, we never stopped. And I used to say to him, it's too bad that we met so young, because I'm never going to marry you. You would have been really fun, though. I have things that are on my list that I want to achieve. But at the end of the day, I couldn't control if love came in 1989 or 2009. I had a choice to make. And I realized that goals didn't have an expiration date. I can still love and support someone else, meaning not pursue my short-term plans to get to the best end game. And so while I didn't get to live all over the world like I had hoped when I first came to Cornell, I was able to find jobs at Sprint and Coke that brought me to Africa, Europe, Asia, Central America, and so on. My dreams just had to adjust a little bit. So I think about balance as not being a competition between certain hours of your day, your week, or your year. It's finding a way to work within that pie where you feel progress in all aspects of your life over time. I like to think of my life, as I said, as chapters of a book. So not every chapter has the character progressing in all parts of their life. Sometimes we need to slow down. Sometimes we need to speed up. And right now, I'm very careful with my work piece. I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. I barely have any time left with them, a couple years. I don't want to miss anything. I want to relish every minute. So I'm not comparing myself to the new superstar managing director. She's sitting next to me now in an office. She has a 9 and a 6-year-old. Oh, I'm not working enough. She's better than I can't focus on that. I've got to live these pieces of my life. And guess what? 6 years ago, when my kids were 12 and 10, I was commuting to Orlando for a job every week. I missed games. I missed activities. Absolutely, I did. And it's not possible to do everything at the same time and to achieve everything you want in the same chapter. So don't stress out about that. Okay, ready for the next one? Be very strict with your time. Okay, so I saw this fact the other day that professional workers like us, we're really only productive 2 hours and 49 minutes of the day. It's so sad. I feel like I'm so much more productive than that. But I think between checking social, news, unproductive meetings, hallway discussions, and all of that. So why is this important to know? Because the more strict you can be with scheduling your life and the things that matter to you, the more balanced your life will be. So just like a CEO would only focus on their top priorities, you can be the CEO of your schedule and life. Planning will keep you focused, happy, driven, making progress. And I promise you that work will weave around what you plan. So if it's yoga, lunch with a friend, again, it's always easy to claim I'm too busy, but no one ever regrets the workout, right? Or the chance for a connection. And there may be legit cycles of your life where that is not possible. So at Rourke, when a deal comes through of a company that we want to buy, literally the deal teams are working 24/7. Sometimes they shower there. Sometimes they go home and sleep for 2 hours. And yeah, there's like 3 weeks of their life that are complete hell. But when it falls down and it's episodic, then that's the time that you regroup, figure out what you're going to do, spend time, take the day off, go play golf, whatever it is that people like to do. But when it slows down, just really plan your time. And with your managed time, start your day the right way. Like, I know it sounds so goofy about the morning routine, but I actually think there is something to this. So for me, to help me start in the right mindset, I love waking up with my 3 dogs. So I have 3 of them because I'm crazy. We wake up, it's like dark out, I make coffee, I watch them play in the backyard. I don't check my phone, I don't check social, I don't check my emails. And then I work out, I come back up, I drink more coffee, I wait for my girls to leave for school. But it's just like this special hour of my day that I feel really joyful and connected to some things that are important to me. And it gives me time to energize and organize my brain for the day. And the other brilliant thing that I did not discover until I was 47 years old, I call it the one to-do list. So I used to separate, oh, I can't do this at work, and I can't do this at home, and I had these 2 different lists that were going. And all of a sudden I'm like, why am I doing that? Like, put it all in one list and do it when you need to do it. And what has happened is I'm much more productive, and it occupies less headspace trying to separate these duties out. I just look at my life as one whole pie, or one whole, personal and work together. And then on a side note, did anyone put laundry or housework in their pie? You did? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So I had in here, yeah, I didn't think so, but we have one. But I think that's another small thing that really adds up. The founder of Rourke uses this term that I really love. He always calls it best and highest use. Is your brain using best and highest use? So he has more capacity than anyone I know. It's amazing. But I think he's a master planner of time and tasks. The laundry doesn't care who folds it, but your personal relationships care when you call, text in, etc. So take away the tasks that eat up your time and try to work it into your budget or somehow share the load as much as you can. And then lastly, plans change, and that's okay. So the point of this is not to live on this strict scheduled life and now it's stressing me out. It's more just to make sure you schedule the things that really are important to you so that they don't slip away. Okay. Next one is be present. So as you're moving through your pieces and schedule, be present. If you're in the moment, like really in the moment, just here, just now, you are gonna feel just so much better about it. So as you move from meeting to home, or class to a meeting, or home back to class, like don't think about the dumb thing that you said yesterday to somebody or the test that's coming weeks ahead. I think if you're sidetracked, you're missing out on the goodness that's right in front of you. And you'll be surprised at how much energy that really creates when you're not constantly doing that in the back of your head. And I know everybody knows about the love chemical, right? But actually listening with your eyes, like even in business relationships, like releases that same chemical. So you're gonna feel better and feel more joyful. So really be present. And of course, I think that's why I fell in love with Jeff when we locked eyes at Johnny's way back when. All right, so now we're gonna head into the hardest three. Okay. Accept imperfection. So that's the first of these, because we see all these people around us that we think are leading these perfect lives, or all the fairy tale books, once upon a time, and then this worked out, and everything's great. And that's how your life works, right? Not really. So when you can start to be brave enough to admit when things aren't going so great, you will really start to feel your own power. So not every decision is gonna work out, but there's never a wrong decision as long as you learn from it. So a few years ago, I joined a startup restaurant company as the president and CEO. It was an exciting time, a time to build something new, build connections and culture for our people. About 6 months into it, I was like, I am leaning into some of my strengths, but man, some of my values are being compromised. And I really didn't see how I could build authentic relationships with those around me, and felt like I didn't do my due diligence of who I got into business with. So the achiever part of me forged on, you can do it, work through it, back to that job that I had in the very beginning of time. I was beating my head against the wall with something that I couldn't change. And then at that point, Jeff and I are a month away from speaking at the Dean's Distinguished Lecture Series in the hotel school. So as a student, that was something I massively looked up to. It was like, oh, if I could ever be asked to do this, this would be such an honor. So then I just wrestled. What do I do? I'm gonna stand in front of all these people and lie about liking my job? Or am I gonna quit and tell them I don't know what I'm doing next? What am I gonna do? So in the end, I stood up in front of everyone and said, what's next? I'm not sure, but I'm not following the need to follow a script. So I want them to see, and I want you to see, that imperfection happens all the time. Sometimes it's really small things, and sometimes it's big things like I had to go through. You're gonna hit bumps, and the fairy tale ending doesn't happen in every chapter, but it's okay, you'll survive. All right, next one is be vulnerable. So my first week in my job, the founder of Rourke came into my office and he gave me the best advice. I was new. I was surrounded by the smartest people I had ever worked with, and I was doing a job that truly required zero interaction with anybody else. It was going to be up to me to create relationships, put my foot out there, and form areas for group input. And he said to me, the thing that has really helped me, Allison, was to be vulnerable. Proactively